The truth is, your mind has been completely hijacked. Neuroscientists have found that the average attention span of a person is 8 seconds, which is, interestingly, less than a freaking goldfish. You see, your mind has been systematically rewired to be distracted, foggy, hazy, and feel scattered all the time by big tech and other social media companies alike. As a result, most people are sleepwalking through their days from morning until night, checking off boxes, hitting their obligations, and doing all those basic things they need to do in order to survive. But they're not really living. They're simply operating somewhere between unconscious and conscious, sleeping and waking. Not fully awake, not fully asleep, but just somewhere in the middle. Since you're watching this, there's a good chance you are one of these people. And I don't say this to attack you or make you feel terrible about yourself, because this was me just a few years back. But if what I've said stings a little bit, then good, because it's time to make some changes. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you the 5 things I've done to completely rewire my brain for long-term attention span in deep focus, and show you exactly how you can do the same to rewire your broken attention span. Let's begin. The modern world wants to keep you distracted. And to make things even more difficult for you, it's important to consider that the way our brains are wired doesn't exactly fit the way the modern world is set up. Let me explain. On the inside, we're wired for assessing threats, hunting for our next meal, and reproducing when it's safe to. Our neural pathways evolved for deep, sustained attention on survival tasks that demanded our complete mental presence. But on the outside, we're faced with challenges that are alien to anybody who lived even 150 years back, because technology has advanced a lot more in the last century compared to what it did in 100,000 plus years. And to make things even more difficult for our brains, we live in a capitalistic world run by money-hungry and power-hungry people. These tech company CEOs, these social media company founders, they don't give a shit about your attention. They don't give a shit about your mental health. They don't give a shit about what you do with your life. They are exploiting your mind for their profit. And they're successfully doing it, because if you look around, most people, including the old version of myself, perhaps including the current version of you, are living in this dull, hypnotic trance, constantly scrolling post after post after post. Here's a great quote that I think pairs with this really well. We are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind. Now, of course, you cannot control how the powers that be communicate with the masses, but you can control what you allow into your mind. Most people don't realize that all forms of content they consume, whether that's social media, mainstream news, the radio, songs, etc., all of it shapes your brain, because your brain cannot distinguish between what is purely entertainment, what is important to know, and what is something that you should not have consumed in the first place. Your brain cannot tell the difference at the unconscious level. It simply absorbs, adapts, and rewires itself to fit the information that you've consumed accordingly. So when you're mindlessly scrolling through useless content that's meant to keep you hooked, keep you distracted, and living in this dull, hypnotic trance, you are training your brain to need that. You are training your brain to crave that rapid-fire, shallow stimulation that comes as a byproduct of that content. And unconsciously, you are accepting this mental fog as your baseline level of cognitive functioning. This is exactly why you're always distracted. Okay, so now that we got the theory out of the way and the understanding about what's happening inside of your brain, let's flip the script. Here are the 5 rules that I followed a few years back and continue to follow to this day in order to build up my attention span, create this mental clarity in my mind, and set up my brain so that I can get in these deep work flow states when I'm making these videos, when I'm writing or editing these videos. Let's begin. Rule number 1, spend intentional time in silence. Now, if you're new to my channel, then you might not know, but I'm really big on meditation. I won't go on and on about this right here because I just made a video about what meditation did to my brain. But what I will say is that the more often you intentionally sit in silence, the calmer your mind becomes. You will still have racing thoughts. You will still have compulsions to scroll social media. You will still have these distractive behaviors, especially in the beginning, because these things take time to rewire in your brain. But this does really help. I strongly recommend spending 3 to 5 minutes every morning and 3 to 5 minutes every night sitting in silence. Rule number 2 is reframing how you use your phone. 30 years ago, nobody would have guessed that a brick-sized piece of technology would become the most addictive drug on the entire planet. Because it most certainly is, or at least what's accessible from this brick-sized device. If you can reframe how you perceive your phone as an entertainment device to a useful sidekick, then how you use it and what you use it for changes completely. You begin using it in ways that are beneficial to you, not destructive to you. And this is a complete game changer. Rule number 3 is something called thought observation. So what you do with this is you sit there much like what you do with mindfulness meditation. But instead of assessing the thought that you're having and casting it aside, you are allowing thoughts to come to mind, but following those train of thoughts. And then afterward, once you're done, you write all of them down. Now, on the surface, this seems really simple. Just follow your thoughts for 5 to 10 minutes, remember them, and write them down. But in doing this, you'll actually realize that this is one of the more difficult things you can do. One idea will connect to this idea, which will connect to this idea, which will connect to this past experience you had, which will connect to an obligation you have over the next few days. And it feels impossible to remember what it is you were just thinking about because your thoughts move from one point to the next so quickly. But the more you do this, the fewer thoughts you have. And of those thoughts you do have, they're more related to what it is you've been working on or what you've been thinking about. Okay, rule number 4 is delayed information gratification. Full transparency, I am an information junkie. When something comes to mind and I'm curious about it, I want to look it up. If somebody mentions something in a conversation that I know nothing about, I want to look it up so I can be competent in that conversation next time we discuss that topic. Learning new things and being well-versed in a bunch of different topics is kind of my thing. Not quite like the people on Jeopardy, but pretty close, I'll admit. But these days, I have intentionally made it so that when something comes to mind and I think, oh yeah, I should look that up, or I have a conversation with somebody and I don't know about it, I don't pull out my phone and research that topic. Instead, I will sit in the silence or I will ask a follow-up question. Because in delaying the information gratification, you're making it so that from a behavioral standpoint, you don't immediately reach for your phone to look something up when you don't know the answer. You can sit in the silence and think your own thoughts about whatever it is this topic is. Unless this is life-changing information you need to know right now, then you don't need to desperately look it up. You don't need to know the information. Sit in the silence, let your imagination wander. If it's truly useful information, if it's truly worth knowing about, your brain will circle back to it at a better time when you can research. Okay, rule number 5, no multitasking for important tasks. We're told to optimize our life for productivity, output, and just getting more things done. This is, I suppose, the nature of the modern day hustle and grind world that we live in. And as a result, we multitask. When your brain is constantly going from one task to the next, you experience what is called switching costs. This is because each time you go from one thing to the next, your brain needs time to reorient itself. And it doesn't happen simultaneously. It doesn't happen instantaneously. In one study, it was reported that after switching tasks from one thing to the next, it can take people up to 23 minutes to reorient their attention and focus. The more often you multitask, the more difficulty you'll have in thinking clearly. And when you have difficulties thinking clearly, you're always distracted. These days, having true mental clarity and the ability to focus for extended periods of time is kind of like knowing how to read and write a few hundred years back. It's not mandatory per se, but anybody who can do it is at a significant advantage compared to other people. If you're serious about rewiring your brain for laser sharp focus and a long attention span that can go for hours on end without becoming distracted, then consider following these 5 rules I've laid out for you here. If you're somebody who is struggling with these issues and you want to challenge yourself, then consider checking out the 3-day Recover Your Focus Challenge in the description of this video. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like, share this with somebody who you think could benefit from it, and tap subscribe. It would mean the world to me. Alrighty, take care.